Welcome into another edition of This Week in UNC Baseball with Scott Forbes. I'm Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. And Coach Forbes, Charlotte, beautiful night for baseball and a solid win for your team. We talked to you in the tunnel after the game, but just sort of looking back, how impressed were you with your players just to be able to take a couple shots early, literally, and then come back and sort of handle South Carolina in the way you did?
Yeah, I mean, you're playing an SEC opponent. I don't know what their schedule had been, but I know that we had gone to Wilmington, gone to Louisville, sandwiched in UConn, lost to UConn, played like crap, and then got on a plane the next morning at 8:30 or whatever and headed to Boston and then turn around, land and get on a bus and go to Charlotte for a 7:00 game. So to be on the road, I don't even know, maybe 9 out of the last 10 or something like that, and to find a way against a really good team to take some punches. But I do think the reason we were able to do that is because we did go through, like we had talked about earlier, we just not played great since that Sunday against Stanford, but that makes you grow, makes you get tougher. I've always thought we have a tough group, but they've learned some lessons through that tough little stretch, and that helped them for sure on Tuesday. Like, it's not a big deal. We go down, no big deal. And then we go up and then they tie it, no big deal. Just keep playing. So it was a really good win for us and showed our toughness.
So for your future planning one day when you're in the SEC, they were at Arkansas and they have Tennessee this weekend, South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, that's it is what it is, right? Like, I was listening. I rewatched the games a lot just to see how we look in the box and how our pitchers look and things like that. And they were talking about that was an SEC crew, obviously, or South Carolina crew. But they did say too, like the SEC and the ACC. I mean, you don't get much off. And I think we have 7 teams maybe ranked in the top 25 right now. Or somebody told me. Every weekend's tough. I left Boston College like, well, I'm not sure. I think they're pretty good. They're older. They can defend. I don't know how they are offensively. And then I pull up the score against UConn. They beat UConn 18-6.
Yep.
So, it's tough playing those midweek games like that, but it was awesome. What a beautiful night. And I love that stadium.
Yeah, there's not a better place to see baseball than that stadium. And folks, if you haven't been, you got to go to see a game in Charlotte, especially South Carolina games, just different.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through a stretch where you're not playing well, what do you look at from your team? I mean, obviously you've got good players. They can perform well. You've seen them perform well. But when they're not, is it a more mental thing or are there structural things going on with your players or with whatever? When you're trying to fix it?
I think there's both. It can get mental if you let it, but it starts and ends with me again. When you're the head coach or running an organization in the business, same thing. It starts with you. So it's how I act during those times and what my attitude's like and what my positivity's like. And, like I've told you before, honesty is important. But positivity is ultra important, and that's just what we're going to do here. But when you have a stretch like that, you just make sure there's no blame game going on. There's no pointing fingers. Because a lot of times in baseball, it's a team sport, but there's a lot of individual competition going on between the pitcher and the hitter. And you want to make sure we're not divided. Make sure we're not blaming it on the pitching staff, not blaming it on the hitters. We always say we win as a team and we lose as a team. So just making sure that the guys understand the importance of staying together. Don't worry. Don't get too high or too low about it. It's the same thing. You sweep somebody this time of the year, that can flip on you in a second too. You got, like, we just played South Carolina midweek, then you got to go to whoever. So really just keeping them even keel, making them understand that during the baseball season, a lot's going to happen, using some comparisons of different teams and different seasons. And understand that every team has that rough stretch. And at the end of the day, how you respond during that rough stretch and how resilient you are. And we find out a whole lot more about ourselves when things aren't going well than we do when everything's going great.
Absolutely. Talking with head coach Scott Forbes. Carolina beats South Carolina, has Miami coming in this weekend. We talk a lot, and before the season, we talked about ask you what players you thought might surprise some folks. Now that you're roughly 25 games in, so almost halfway through the season, who's sort of surprised you or surprised the coaching staff with what they've been able to do?
You get surprises on both sides. If you'd asked me at the beginning of the season, I would have thought, well, we've had a lot of really good hitters here, but Sam Angelo, just based on what I'm seeing so far, looks like, hand-eye coordination, bat the ball, controlling the strike zone. He's got a chance to be really special. And so, I would have thought he was hitting 410 or 380 with 10 home runs. So that one has surprised me. But then again, what's been awesome is to see him go through that and to be able to get through it and have some of our best at bats in the last 2 weeks. So that's why you got to be careful looking at batting average. There have been some really good ones too. Sawyer Black, I thought he had a chance to be a good player. We're always looking for more left-handed hitter and depth, left-handed wise, because that causes a lot of problems on other teams. Sawyer's always been able to hit a fastball, but he's worked hard with Coach Weirs at becoming more of a complete hitter and also becoming more of a complete outfielder. That was a tough play at South Carolina, but he's played a good outfield for us. I would say on the mound, the fact that we, a guy like Olin Johnson, like, hey, this guy's a starter. That's just what he is. And the last 2 weeks, it's been the opposite. It's like, hey, his niche, on this team is going to be out of the bullpen, and he's been really good at it. There's some other ones here or there, but I would say, for the most part, I feel like I had an idea of what we would be like. And you're not sure about freshmen, Tommy. I have to say you're somewhat surprised at the performance of Lynch and McDuffie, being just true freshmen, being as good as they've been. And then Aiden Houck being able to transition into that starter role. Jake Knapp being as good as he's been early, coming off of that injury. So there have been some great surprises, but also some that really didn't surprise me because I see things behind the scenes with how hard these kids work.
Yeah, I always tell people too, they're like, why isn't so-and-so playing or whatever? And I'm like, these guys see them literally every single day. Do you think they're going to play somebody or not play somebody if they'll help the team? I mean, let's get realistic.
That's normal though. Like I get that too. Like you coach long enough, fans are fans. Coach Williams always, he made a great quote to me when I first got the job. He said, just remember, no, you're not going to go ask, the lead mechanic. Most people don't like tell him how to do his job, but everybody's going to always tell you how to do your job as a coach. So you just got to put that to the side and deal with it and not buy into it. But we are practice every single day. And at the end of the day, now one thing that makes no sense is I don't think there are any coaches at this level that once the game starts, whatever lineup they put up there and whoever they pitch, you would think, Tommy, that they're doing it to win the game, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, there's the favoritisms and all that. Like those are blinders by parents or fans because you throw those out the door when that game starts and you put whoever's in that on the field that you think is going to help your team win.
Absolutely. Speaking of who you put on the mound, Cam Padgett obviously had a very rough start. South Carolina looked like they had a bunch of linebackers up there hitting, especially at the top of that lineup. But when you have a situation like that, and he's not the first nor the last pitcher that'll have a start like that, and then you've got to holler down and tell Walker McDuffie or whoever to get up, how much scramble mode does that put you in? And obviously you rely on guys to step up, but McDuffie comes in cold, warms up, comes in, shuts them down. Just talk about I don't want to say the bad word because I know we don't do that here, but the oh no roll when you see that start.
Yeah. Like I told you, the worst case scenario from Bobby Bowden's book, like he always sat down with the staff. Okay, so what's the worst case scenario? So we do try to talk about that. So we have a plan, like something happens. You hope that's not a worst case scenario, but I've been in those scenarios as a pitching coach here a lot and not as much, thankfully, because we had really good pitchers. But, we had to start at Florida State one year on a Sunday for the rubber match where I mean, they had one run and our starter hadn't gotten out, and you got to make a change. So that's my favorite part, honestly. Well, there's many favorite parts, but the in-game favorite part for me as the head coach is you got to have the kahunas to make the call, and because it is what it is. But you got to look at it as like, this is fun to have to make that call, because at the end of the day, you know, most of the time you're either right or you're wrong, but you feel like you've done enough prep that if we can get Walker McDuffie ready fast enough, this is the key point of the game. They got 3 straight base runners. They got Kennedy Jones, who's got a boatload of power. If he hits a home run right here, it's 4-0, 2-0, 4-0. Runner on second base. You know, if we can get out of this with 2 or 3 runs, we got a shot. So that's just what I felt like we needed to do. To credit Walker, he got ready quick enough, and he was able to get us back in the dugout. And things like that go on throughout a game, they're big. And then later in the game with Matty Mathias, just didn't get it done, and Lynch was able to come in and get out of it for the most part, and then only give up 1 more run. So those are the things that are fun to have to decide, and you try to prepare your players too. That's where coaching comes in. You have to coach your relievers how to get ready fast. I tell our guys all this new age baseball and weighted balls, if your guy takes 12 minutes, 14 minutes, you got to do all this prep, all this routine, you're not going to be a reliever. Go to a big league series and watch the series and watch the foam ring down the bullpen. Those dudes are ready in about 4 minutes. So we work on that. We have a plan for that. And thankfully, because that was oh boy, this is not good. And then you have some stall tactics to try to get that guy a little bit more, and we were able to do that.
Yeah, it was interesting. Grace and I sat down by the bullpen later in the game, and when Mathias was out there, Lynch, and then y'all ran Folger down there, and he's working, and they're getting loose, but they're not getting ready that quickly. But as soon as that ball hit the wall over Tyson Bassett's head, then it really kicked in, and then y'all went in. And then Lynch, when he's warming up, I still go back to the Durham Bulls game and think about that. But he got ready quickly. He comes in, and he's sharp right out of the gate. What's that say about a freshman or anybody really, to be able to dial it in that specifically and that fast in that tight moment?
Well, it's a transition, and I still like it starts with the coaching, preparing these guys. Okay, you're not a starter. We got to build this routine. You got to learn from your mistakes, like in Durham. Lynch had never warmed up, he said, in his life on a field where there was no backstop. So, you're warming up and there's nothing there, and it can mess with you a little bit, and that carried over into the game. But learning also not to throw too much and trust me when I say, hey, I can get you 20 pitches. Like, I was a pitching coach a long time, and I'm good at, I'll find a way to slow the game down. Whatever it is. We can have guys tighter shoes. We can figure things out to give us more time. But I think it says a lot about those kids coaching themselves a little bit too, figuring out like, okay, I have to be able to get ready fast. I have to prioritize my pitches. If I throw 3, I obviously have to get my fastball ready first, and I'm just going to get my best off-speed pitch ready, and I'll get the other one ready as I get looser. But, most of the time, we've gotten to where if we get a guy hot, we get him ready on eyes, he's going in the game.
When you mentioned Folger at the end in the post game, and everybody that watches this show and pays attention to Carolina baseball knows what happened to Folger last year in Charlotte. Did you have a plan to get him in the game no matter what for that reason, or did it just work out on Tuesday night?
No, as much as I would like to say that's a feel-good story, again, it's about winning the game, having our guys ready to win the game. But Folger's one of our best pitchers. He just doesn't have the numbers right now to say that, but he's one of them. We knew, like, okay, we need Folger to pitch well. We need Olin Johnson to help us. And he had some really good bullpen sessions. Me and him talked a lot about trying to do too much, just get back into that competition factor. But I was hoping that there was an opportunity that he would get in there, because I had a good feeling, knowing Folger, how competitive he is. You don't forget those things. That was the last pitch he threw before he had to have surgery. And we felt like the way the game went, I went up to Folger. I said, Folger, you're probably going to finish this game, because it's not going to be Lynch and Matty probably. So you need to be ready mentally to finish this game, and he sure was.
You've got guys like Folger, Jake Knapp coming off injuries, but how much of at this point in the season is a specific pitch count, and is it purely looking at the analytics as they go to determine when you're going to pull somebody? Clearly, if they get in trouble, that's different. But if they're cruising along, and then you start seeing a drop in velocity or whatever, how do you decide how far you're going to ride somebody versus I need to get them out of here to protect them or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely looking at the data because you'd be dumb not to. But I don't know if you've seen the thing on Netflix, The Comeback. It's a 3-part series about Boston. They interviewed Terry Francona. Yeah, you look at them, but you still have to make your gut decision. And college is different than the big leagues. Yeah, the batting averages are different the third time through, but it depends on the starter and depends on what you see. Like whoever we were playing when I went out and taught the Knapp, I felt like he didn't look like he was dog tired. He still had a good fastball. We knew that the fastball still had the same velocity that it had in the first. And some guys get a little bit better later. It's just the way that they are natured. And no matter what, too, even though it's the third time through, depending on what you have available that day in the bullpen, that guy might be better the third time through than what you have coming in fresh. So I look at it that way. Pitch counts are overrated from the standpoint of how many strikes you throw. Well, they're overrated, but you have to pay attention to them. How'd you get to that pitch count? If you throw 130 pitches, and you have one inning that you throw 38, you probably shouldn't throw 130 pitches. But if you're not taxed that much, you can let guys go. Because in college baseball, minimum rest is going to be 5 days. But most of the time, it's 6 days.
Do you have, and we're talking a lot about pitching because I think this is the main thing for your team. I could be wrong, but I think pitching is where you make your hay this season because the offense will be there in some form at some point. But when you're looking at, like we talked about Tuesday, when Padgett got in trouble, you get him out of there. Do you treat it differently if that's a Friday night? Or do you?
I mean, right now you do, most likely. Because we really haven't – nobody has emerged yet as that fourth starter. Like, okay, do we have anybody that can go out there and give us that 6 innings? And in college baseball, the four-starter thing, as you move forward, you don't need that as much. It's usually going to be a spot starter, and you would rather – I mean, obviously, like if we were starting Ryan Lynch, he'd be a pretty good four-starter. But we need Ryan Lynch right now in our bullpen in the ACC. So Friday night, like I'm going to leave Jake Knapp in that situation because he's earned it, and he's shown me that he can get out of it. But until you show me that you can get in a jam – or get out of that jam. If your history is not good on the season of getting out of that jam, I'm going to go to somebody who's got a better history of getting out of that jam.
Looking at the weekend, you going the same rotation? I mean, I think I personally like Houck in that Sunday role because you've got a lockdown in Sunday, but a lot of people say, move him up. What are you looking at?
I really like what I saw with Jason DeCaro. His fastball was back. We are going to answer your question. We're going to go Knapp, DeCaro, Houck. Could we change it? Yeah, we could as we move forward. But that's also a pretty dang good Saturday starter going. In Jason DeCaro that made one mistake, gave up a home run. But his velocity's good. He competes. He actually struck out more guys than Jake did, I think, during his outing. Houck had the most, obviously. But I'm confident in all three of them. I feel like they're all Friday night capable. So we're going to stay with that this weekend.
You've coached and played and watched a ton of baseball. Have you ever seen the third out and a no-hitter do like it did
and
at
it was
Boston
a hit.
College?
I know.
They give him a hit. I would have said a fielder's choice somehow.
The crazy thing is if the umpire would have made the right call and we pick it up and step on first, it's a no-hitter.
That's what I was yelling at Stokely, go get the ball and throw it over there.
I think we're all just kind of like, well, we saw him go like this. So we're like, well, that's the ball game. And again, our team, like everybody was like, "You kidding me? Like unbelievable! That was a no hitter." But we know how hard. That's the other thing people don't realize. Well, they go by who you play instead of winning road series is difficult in our league. Just look at the history. Getting sweeps is even more difficult. So we were like, hey, we just won this series. We played really well, and we're going to get the heck out of here and get home and get ready for South Carolina. Well, we celebrated a no-hitter anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a no-hitter. That's crazy. And then it happens to
really
Tyson
not.
on Tuesday.
We still said it's really not, but it is, even if it was, because we've been messing with our pitching staff. Like, who's going to throw a 9-inning complete game? Like, Jake had a complete game, but Jake really wasn't. It was 7. So, we bust chops quite a bit around here.
Yeah, I think you'll take a solid 7 like that, though, every night, won't you?
Every night. We go 7-7-7 this weekend, I'm going to feel mighty good.
Yeah, it'll be a good weekend for sure. Talking about your lineup, obviously Kepley's been sort of the engine getting it started, but Luke, I don't know if anybody's seeing a bigger baseball than Luke Stevenson. I mean, aside from the emotion he showed in watching the second one a little bit, which I don't know that you cared for too terribly much.
Yeah.
I mean, what could he do better?
It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as it looked. Like I went back and watched it, but our guys know, like, hit it and run around the bases. I tell them all the time, I'm glad I didn't have the ability that you guys had, because I probably would have watched every one I hit, but I'm not letting y'all do that. He just works. That's the other thing people don't see. He was in a tough stretch from the standpoint. You really looked at his numbers. He was walking a ton, but he wasn't getting a ton of hits. But he was getting extra base hits, and he's capable of being a pure hitter too. So he was a little bit frustrated. He worked hard with Coach Weir's, got more separation, and that carried over, especially Tuesday against South Carolina. But I think Coach Jackson's idea of, we talk about things as a staff, and I've got an unbelievable staff. I'm just so lucky. They're all baseball guys, no egos. Everybody just wants to win. Hey, we need to protect Luke. So moving Stoke up behind him helps Luke, because, what are you going to do right now? You're going to go.
Can't walk him.
You can't walk him. And then Gavin having, some really clutch factor in there, and Bass getting going. We felt like, okay, we pretty much have those 7 guys that have played every game. And, I told them, I said, one reason you play every game too is because you're locking down your position defensively. So let's don't get too much in Panicville because you struggled a little bit offensively. Just grind out these at-bats, have great quality at-bats, and then some other guys will start getting going, and we'll lengthen out the lineup, and that's to help with Angelo and Black. But we also feel like we've got some right-handed options when we face lefties that we can get going, in Kellis and Hargett and Dye and, some other depth guys. So I like our guys because they're tough. We're not going to hit 130 home runs, but I think we can generate some runs.
I'm like you. If I'd hit one in Mint Street, like the first one he hit, it probably would have been the longest home run trot in baseball, and I would have just trotted on down the tunnel because I know you would have taken me out of the game.
The sneaky one, Sawyer got his too. That was a bomb too.
That ball was flying out of that park.
Yeah, it flies there.
Did you ever determine the Tyson Bass glasses thing?
He said that he started wearing those more like at night because it helps with lights, kind of helps with the glare. And I said, well, maybe you should just wear them even when the lights aren't out. Looks like you're seeing the ball pretty good.
Yeah, he's come around. It's the evolution of him from the fall being, he was fantastic in the fall and then struggling to come along. But last question for you, because I know you got to get out of here. Sam Angelo, you mentioned him earlier. You mentioned him in the tunnel about him having the most, or on your chart, the best at bats. Sort of explain that for people, because we talk about batting average is overrated, and his batting average, if you looked at it on its face, is not good. Explain why he's one of the best, if not at the top of your chart that you guys keep.
Well, especially, you look at it over courses of games too. He wasn't one of the best, which is why he sat on the bench for a while. And Sam had also, in his entire baseball career, I sat down and talked with him about this. I said, have you struggled as a hitter? And he said, honestly, Coach, I've never really, not like this. He's always hit. And he always has hit for a high batting average. So you start off, you start pressing, and it's always good sometimes to have to sit there and be like, well, it can't get any worse. As Bobby Knight in that video says, butt meets bench, brain signal. But sometimes watching being like, hey, when I go back in there, I'm just going to play because it's only going to go up. So we talked about that too. What are you hitting right now, Sam? Well, I'm hitting 120. Well, I doubt you're going to hit 100. You probably got the chances are better that it's going to go up. But you watch his BP, you put him back in. He still had, I don't know off the top of my head, I could probably pull it up pretty quick. He's pretty close with walks to strikeouts. Mm-hmm. And, you got those guys at the top and Kepley and Luke and Stokely. So if we can get more guys on base, we're looking at it like just have quality at bat. So what we mean by quality at bat is, what is your at bat like? Because our goals here are to get a good pitch to hit and get your A swing off. And if you don't get those two things, you probably walk, right? And find a way on. What are you doing with the runner on second base and nobody out? Do you get him over to third? If you get a sack bunt, do you get it down? Sack fly situation, do you hit it hard? And I keep my own chart too. I always put a B beside, F8, but I put a B if they found the barrel because there's a difference between hitting the ball at the end of the bat and getting jammed. And we felt like Sam was really looking at the ball. He had hit a lot of balls really hard to the warning track. And we kind of use the golf analogy. I'm not a good golfer, but I enjoy reading about golfers because it's such a challenge mentally. And golfers will tell you if they feel like that they're striking the ball over and over and over well, they may not be scoring great, might not be putting great at the time, but they feel like the scoring's coming. Same thing in baseball. If you have good at bats, you keep putting them together. We had Brandon Riley here in 2018. He had an atrocious first half, but he was still walking and still scoring some runs. So, that's what we track. Like Sam last week was the winner of the QAB at like 68%, but he just didn't get hits. Because sometimes you can have a game. We always mess around like, hey man, are you living right when you hit 4-line drives, 108, and they go directly to left, center, right, and second? But that's baseball. Right. And you also have to go by as a coach, like what do they look like in a box? What are their breaths like? There's a big difference between the nervous breath. They're just fighting in a little bit. So he's in a good spot, and I feel like failure helps you get there.
So if I get 4 at bats in a game for you, and I get 12 hellacious, great swings off and fan 4 times, are they quality at bats?
Nope. That is non-contact, Tommy. Let me add that. You get a good pitch to hit, you get your A swing off, you should at least foul it off. Hopefully you can put it in play eventually.
Yeah, you should. Last fun question. Okay. Coach Forbes, Coach Howell, Coach Gaines, Coach Jackson, Coach Wiersbicky are having a home run hitting contest out your window this afternoon. 10 pitches apiece or 10 outs like they do. Who's winning the home run contest?
I mean, it's Coach Gaines or Coach Weirs. Coach Weirs because he's the best hitter. But Coach Gaines is strong and gigantic. So maybe he's a big dude with power, but I would have to pick, unfortunately, I don't want to let Coach Weirs know this, but we would all pick Coach Weirs because there are days where he gets in the box where it looks like he could still hit in the top 5 like he did when he was here. Coach Gaines now, I wouldn't sleep on him. He gets the right BP guy. Nah, if I'm at Notre Dame or BC and the wind's blowing out, I can pull it and get it in the air. But nah, Tommy, there's no bat speed. Not that there ever was, but those guys, Coach Gaines, he gets the right BP guy. He could launch him up into the net easily.
Who's the best fungo hitter? Like if you need to hit a target consistently, is that you?
Coach Weirs would say himself, but I would take me over Coach Weirs.
I see
I'm
some
confident in my fungo hitting ability.
I see some confidence building up.
But not in my BP ability. I'm lowest on the depth chart and throwing BP.
We're gonna have to have a competition in the offseason. Just looking ahead, just give us a scout on Miami a little bit before I let you get out of here.
Yeah, I sat down and watched the whole game last night. They played Stetson. They just had a bad night. They're Miami. They've got good players. They've taken Roberts out of the rotation and put him back in the bullpen. He was their closer last year. They're going to go TBA on Sunday. They'll be a handful. They haven't played great lately, but they've played good teams. They played weekend series against Wake Forest, Florida State, and Florida. So they've seen good arms and good hitters. So we'll have a battle on our hands, and we'll have to play well.
Indeed. That starts at 6 o'clock on Friday afternoon in Boshamer Stadium, Carolina and Miami. Another ACC series. Coach Forbes, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks a ton. Fans, come on out. We need you this weekend.
Absolutely. It should be a beautiful day in Chapel Hill. Shout out to head coach Scott Forbes for joining me today on This Week in UNC Baseball. Big series coming ahead. But before I talk about that, I need to talk about Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com, sponsors of this show and great friends of Inside Carolina and you, the Inside Carolina subscriber. They're always available online. They're almost always available on Franklin Street during working hours. If you're in Chapel Hill, stop by Johnny T-Shirt on East Franklin Street, or if you can't get there, go to johnnytshirt.com. Tell them Inside Carolina sent you, get 10% off your order. A great thing to do this weekend. Be in Chapel Hill for the beautiful spring day and check out them. Get your baseball jersey before heading over to Boshamer Stadium. Johnny T-Shirt, wonderful sponsors of this show and wonderful folks, alumni owned and operated. And they've always been an Inside Carolina staple and a Franklin Street staple. Keep them that way by supporting the local business. Also, shout out to Matt and Darren at Congruity. Email matt@congruityhr.com. Get your small to mid-sized business assessment. They've grown their business into a national brand. They can do the same for your small to mid-sized business. Just email Matt. Tell them, you need some help. See what they can do for you. They've got the technology. They've got the customer support. They've got everything you could possibly want for your small business, and they can guide you in the right direction. So email matt@congruityhr.com for your help with your small to mid-sized business. Like the crawl says at the bottom, Carolina, Miami, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. First pitch is Friday night in Boshamer Stadium. Come out and support the Tar Heels as Coach Forbes requested. And as always, stay tuned to Inside Carolina. Grace Nugent, Matt Clements, Jim Hawkins, everybody doing the baseball stuff, and also the rest of the Inside Carolina crew covering all your Carolina football, basketball, baseball, Olympic sports needs over at InsideCarolina.com. If you're not a member of the premium message boards, you need to join up. Plenty of portal season, plenty of recruiting, and plenty of information that you can only get at Inside Carolina, and you need to be a premium subscriber to do it. See you around.